Now to some other stories. The Ghana Integrity Initiative says there were several infractions with the management of the COVID-19 funds during the height of the pandemic. Now, according to them, whilst the Minister of Finance presented to Parliament a statement of account on the resources for COVID-19 intervention, the minister's presentation cannot be construed to constitute an audit or accountability, as it focused on the headline items rather than the detailed expenditure and compliance issues regarding the use of public funds. The Ghana Integrity Initiative says there are issues which have been specifically stated as worrying and have a potential to exacerbate the high perception of corruption by citizens. Now, these include some three statements that they've pointed out, which, of course, a $10 million loan to produce emergency PPE kit and gear. There's an evidence to suggest that there was no tendering notice given for the procurement, contrary to the Public Procurement Amendment Act 2016, that's Act 914. Now, also, the 4 selected companies by the Ministry of Trade to produce PPEs were not registered with the PPA, offending sections 43 and 44 of Act 914. To $7.4 million for community engagement and risk communication. The government established a National Information Contact Center at the Accra Digital Center to provide information on COVID-19 and related matters. However, there has not been any information about how much government spent on that setup, as no figures have been released publicly. And 3, with regards to a $3.6 million for health system strengthening, it is unclear how government spent funds earmarked under this allocation from the World Bank funding. And in the case of government support to schools with Veronica bucket, sanitizers, rolls of tissue paper, gallons of liquid soap and thermometer guns, as well as hot meals for final year students, there has been no full disclosure of who won these contracts, from which funds the contract were awarded, and whether the contract went through the proper procurement processes. Now, joining us for more on this is the Programs Manager at the Ghana Integrity Initiative, Mary Ada. Thank you so much, Madam Ada, for joining us. Now, what are some of the major infractions that have been identified with regards to the management of COVID-19 funds?
Thank you very much. And let me say good morning to your viewers this morning. One of the things we did as part of the African Union Convention Day Against Corruption was to look back at some of the surveys we have been involved with in the past year. And one that quickly comes to mind is one we did on the various COVID-19 interventions that were rolled out by government during the peak of the pandemic. So the findings thereof showed that we had a lot of issues around procurement, because most of the contracts were single source, admittedly so because of the exigencies of the time with the procurement law permits. But then what was critical was the fact that in some of the instances, the agencies responsible did not even take the issues to the Public Procurement Board to ensure that they have rectified or approved such procurements before they were undertaken. And that is a serious breach in the law, because if you are single sourcing, you need approval of the entity to do so. Again, after these procurements are done, we know for a fact that after a year, there must be some audits happening to ensure that funds that have been disbursed, funds that have been expended, contracts awarded and executed have been done according to the law. Unfortunately, as at the time of our survey, we realized that in most of the instances, audits had not been carried out. And so you realize that the various calls from civil society and also calls from the opposition in Parliament currently for a forensic audit of sorts, it's appropriate. Again, to say that in the celebration of the African Union Day Against Corruption, you realize that it is remarkable that the African Union itself has cited that in most of its member states or the state parties thereof, there were issues around transparency and accountability when it comes to the execution of most of the issues around COVID. So it means it goes to confirm and validate some of the worries we have had around this. Let me put this a caveat on this and say that for us in our work, we realize that in the issues around the private sector funds, and also when it comes to the COVID-19 trust fund, you realize that issues around transparency were adequately catered for. You go on their website and whatever information you wanted on contributions made is available, on disbursement made as well, that was available. So we didn't have any red marks to that. But the key challenges have had to do with issues around procurement and contracting, and the major of them have related to the single sourcing of the procurement of the various interventions, including those that happened at the airport, the Sputnik V issues, and also most of the PPE contracts that were single sourced. And you begin to wonder
why do
what
these
qualifications merited those.
Well, why do these infractions occur, even as we as a country have signed on to charters to be transparent with things such as these?
Unfortunately, it is state parties, as we say, as state parties, they are independent. What they are supposed to do is to ensure that they make laws or legislations that are in tandem with the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. We say AUCPCC. Unfortunately, the African Union cannot come into the country to say do this or do that. It wants to see you make laws to activate the various articles that it has spelled out. So it is for our public service, our bureaucracy to flow smoothly. And it is as well for us to then activate the various sanctions that are embedded in these beautiful laws we have promulgated. Unfortunately, leadership continues to be our bane because we realize that when it came to the Sputnik V advocacy that we embarked on, every opportunity was used to bring to the attention of the executive, and in this case, the president, that things did not go well. And for that matter, people who are supposed to be in the helm of affairs must be held accountable. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Our president, so leadership commitment to ensuring the execution of our laws and also sanctions when it comes time to ensure deterrence is what we do not see very much of as a people, unfortunately.
Thank you so much, Madam Mary Ada, for joining.